There comes a moment in every life when the universe quietly removes something you thought you could never live without. And in that terrifying silence right there, right when your heart is begging for answers, you're forced to face a truth so shocking, so undeniable, that it changes you forever. What leaves you was never yours. What stays was never in danger. And what is meant for you will arrive in a way that shatters every doubt you've ever had. People think letting go is gentle, but the real moment of release. It feels like standing at the edge of everything you thought you were, watching the world you built crumble, not to punish you, but to reveal the truth hidden underneath. A truth that will either break you open or set you free. Because sometimes life doesn't whisper. Sometimes it tears something from your hands so violently that the only thing left to do is finally listen. And what you discover in that moment is the beginning of the greatest transformation of your life. Before we dive deeper into this journey of awakening and Buddhist wisdom, make sure to subscribe to Buddhism in every moment so you won't miss the videos that continue this powerful series. And so our channel has the strength and motivation to keep creating meaningful content for you. Part 1: The invitation to let go when life tries to show you something. There is a turning point in life that very few people talk about, the moment when something inside you quietly breaks open. It doesn't break in a dramatic, cinematic way. It breaks the way dawn replaces darkness, slowly, steadily, without asking your permission. Most people don't notice it at first. They wake up, go to work, drink their coffee, talk about their plans, and tell themselves that everything is fine. But beneath the routine, beneath the expectations, something begins to shift. Something internal, subtle, and ancient stirs within the heart. A quiet truth begins to rise from a place deeper than thought. It begins with a feeling you can't explain, a heaviness you can't name, a tension that doesn't quite belong to any specific moment. You simply feel misaligned, as if you're walking in shoes that no longer fit or living inside a story you've outgrown. This is the invitation. The moment when life gently taps on your heart and whispers, "Not this way anymore." But most people do not hear it. Or rather, they hear it but pretend they don't. Because letting go, truly letting go, requires a kind of courage that feels unnatural at first. Letting go feels like stepping into an empty room after years of living in a crowded house. It feels too quiet, too spacious, too unfamiliar. So we cling. We cling to habits, relationships, dreams, identities, and routines that once made sense but now drain us. We cling because the familiar feels safer than the unknown, even if the familiar is hurting us. We cling because our minds convince us that holding on is strength and releasing is weakness. But in Buddhism, strength is not found in holding tighter. It is found in releasing with wisdom. It is found in trusting the impermanence of all things. And at some point, life stops whispering and begins pulling. Something ends abruptly. Something falls apart without warning. Something you counted on collapses in front of you. You try to negotiate with reality. You tell yourself it shouldn't have happened, couldn't have happened, wouldn't have happened if you had only been better, stronger, more prepared, more lovable. But none of those explanations quiet the ache inside your chest. Because the truth is simpler than the stories we create. What is no longer aligned with your soul cannot remain, no matter how tightly you hold it. Letting go isn't merely an emotional event. It is a spiritual initiation, the beginning of a deeper, more honest relationship with life itself. The real moment letting go begins. Letting go rarely starts with a decision, it begins with discomfort. With the rising awareness that something in your life is weighing you down. But for a long time, you convince yourself to carry it anyway. You carry the relationship you've long since outgrown because you fear being alone. You carry the job that drains your spirit because you fear uncertainty. You carry the expectations of others because you fear disappointing them. But the soul has a limit to how much weight it will allow you to carry before it intervenes. There is a moment when life says, enough. You may not recognize this moment immediately. You may resist it, deny it, or interpret it as punishment. But the moment comes for everyone. And when it does, something inside you knows you cannot continue in the same direction. Buddhist teachings describe this moment as dukkha, a dissatisfaction so deep that it becomes a catalyst for awakening. Not because pain is noble or desirable, but because pain exposes the truth we tried to avoid. Pain strips away illusion. Pain removes the blindfold. Pain forces honesty. And in that honesty, you realize that the life you have been living is not the life you are meant to continue living. The universe doesn't take IT clears. Most people think letting go is about losing something. But spiritually, letting go is about clearing. Clearing old energy, old patterns, old fears, old identities. Clearing space for the next season of your life to unfold. Imagine this. You are walking through a beautiful forest, carrying a backpack filled with rocks. You believe the rocks are important memories, regrets, promises, obligations, expectations, so you refuse to set the backpack down. But the farther you walk, the heavier it becomes. The forest gets steeper. Your breath gets shorter. Your vision narrows. Eventually you collapse. Not because you are weak, but because you were never meant to climb with that much weight. This is when life intervenes. It doesn't punish you. It doesn't scold you. It simply removes the rocks you refuse to release. This removal feels violent. It feels sudden. It feels unfair. But the truth is this: it is mercy in disguise. You weren't being torn apart. You were being relieved. You were being realigned. Life does not take what is meant for you. Life only takes what keeps you from becoming who you truly are. The silence after the loss. Once something leaves your life, something you didn't feel ready to release, there is always a silence. A quiet, unfamiliar space where your thoughts echo louder than before. This silence is sacred. It is the first moment your soul has had to breathe in years. It is the first moment your heart has had without something pressing against it. It is the first moment life can begin to rebuild without resistance. But silence scares people. It feels like emptiness. It feels like loneliness. It feels like the world has been drained of color. But in Buddhism, silence is not emptiness. Silence is clarity. Silence is the clearing of mental noise. Silence is the space where truth becomes audible. When everything external falls away, you finally hear what has been inside you all along. And what you hear is this: you are still here. You are still whole. You are still becoming. The transformation begins where resistance ends. Transformation does not begin when everything is going well. Transformation begins when resistance collapses. The moment you stop fighting life, life begins to work in your favor. This is the paradox that Buddhism teaches beautifully. Suffering comes from resisting impermanence. Peace comes from accepting it. The pain you feel is not from the ending, it is from resisting the ending. The fear you feel is not from the unknown, it is from clinging to the known. Once you surrender, the heaviness dissolves. You start to feel lighter. You start to breathe easier. You start to see possibilities where before you saw only barriers. You don't feel back to normal, you feel new. More honest. More grounded. More awake. Letting go is not the end of your story. Letting go is the moment your story finally becomes true. You were never meant to hold everything. There is a myth in modern culture that strength means holding everything together, holding emotions in, holding relationships together, holding your career steady, holding your identity intact. But Buddhist wisdom teaches something radically different. Strength is not what you hold. Strength is what you release. Strength is choosing peace over control. Strength is choosing truth over comfort. Strength is choosing growth over familiarity. Strength is unclenching your fists. Strength is saying, "This no longer nurtures me, and I am ready to let it go." You were not meant to hold everything. You were meant to hold what aligns with your path. You were meant to hold what expands your spirit. You were meant to hold what brings you into harmony with your highest self. Everything else must be released. When letting go becomes a doorway. Every ending in your life has something in common. It pushed you toward a deeper version of yourself. You didn't see it at first. You didn't understand it. You didn't want it. But with time, perspective and healing, you recognize something profound. What left was never meant to stay. What ended was never meant to continue. What dissolved was never built on truth. Life doesn't close doors to punish you. Life closes doors to redirect you. And sometimes, the new door doesn't appear until the old door is gone. Sometimes the next chapter doesn't begin until the previous chapter is truly over. Sometimes your growth demands space that your old life could never give you. Letting go clears the soil. Letting go makes room for new seeds. Letting go prepares you for the life that is meant for you. In this sense, letting go is not loss. Letting go is the beginning of alignment. And alignment is where peace lives, the truth you were meant to discover. After everything falls apart, after the resistance collapses, after the silence settles, after the tears dry, there comes a moment, a quiet, powerful, unmistakable moment when you finally understand what all the pain was trying to teach you. Nothing meant for you will ever require you to abandon yourself to keep it. Nothing meant for you will drain your spirit. Nothing meant for you will confuse your soul. Nothing meant for you will make you feel small, insecure, or unworthy. What is meant for you will arrive with clarity. What is meant for you will feel like peace. What is meant for you will stay without force. And perhaps the most liberating truth of all, what is meant for you cannot be taken from you. What is meant for you cannot be rushed. What is meant for you cannot be delayed. It will come. It will stay. It will unfold exactly as it should. Your only task is to make space for it. Your only responsibility is to release what no longer resonates. Your only job is to walk forward with open hands and an open heart. Letting go is not the final chapter. It is the invitation to your real story. And this moment right now is where the transformation begins. Part 2: The nature of attachment, the invisible weight we carry. Attachment is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. Most people hear the word and assume it refers to love, loyalty, commitment, or devotion. But in Buddhist wisdom, attachment is something entirely different, far more subtle, far more powerful, and far more capable of shaping your inner world than you might ever imagine. Attachment is not about caring. Attachment is about clinging. It is the invisible thread that wraps itself around your heart when fear begins to whisper that you will not be okay if something changes, leaves, or evolves. It is the tightening in your chest when life tries to move you forward, but you aren't ready to loosen your grip on what is familiar. Attachment is the silent deal you make with your own suffering. A deal that says, "I would rather hold on to what hurts than face the uncertainty of what comes next." And because this mindset is so common, so normalized, most people go their entire lives believing attachment is love, when in reality it is the very thing keeping them from experiencing love fully. The root of attachment, fear, wears many disguises. If you strip attachment down to its core, beneath the stories, beneath the excuses, beneath the surface-level desires, you will always find one thing: fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of change. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing something that gave your life meaning. Fear of stepping into a future you cannot predict. Fear rarely introduces itself as fear. Instead, it disguises itself as responsibility, hope, loyalty, pressure, or even morality. Fear tells you stay, even if it hurts. Don't change, you'll regret it. Don't let go, you'll be lost. Hold on tighter, this is all you have. Fear has a vocabulary designed to keep you frozen. And attachment is fear's strongest weapon. When you attach to something, an outcome, a dream, a version of yourself, you begin to feel responsible for controlling it. You convince yourself that your safety depends on things remaining exactly as they are. And in that moment, peace becomes conditional. Your happiness becomes fragile. Your sense of self becomes dependent on circumstances outside your control. That is the prison of attachment. The silent weight you don't know you're carrying. Most of the suffering you experience day to day does not come from the outside world. It comes from attachment, your refusal to let life be what it is, your insistence that things should unfold differently, your belief that you must protect yourself by controlling everything around you. Attachment is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't warn you that you're stepping into a trap. It shows up quietly, almost politely, and says, "Here, carry this. It will make you feel secure." And so, without realizing it, you agree. You carry expectations that exhaust you. You carry guilt that doesn't belong to you. You carry ideas about who you should be instead of who you truly are. You carry old dreams long past their season. You carry emotional debts that can never be repaid. And because you've carried these things for so long, you mistake them for identity. But deep down, your soul knows the truth. Attachment is weight. And no matter how strong you are, weight accumulated over years will bend your spirit. The difference between love and attachment. Perhaps the greatest confusion in life comes from mistaking attachment for love. But the two are radically different. Love is spacious. Attachment is dense. Love supports growth. Attachment resists growth. Love is rooted in freedom. Attachment is rooted in fear. Love expands you. Attachment restricts you. Love says, "I want you to be happy." Attachment says, "I want you to keep me comfortable." One liberates, the other suffocates. In Buddhism, love is expressed through compassion and non-clinging. It is a presence, not a possession. It is an intention, not an ownership. When you love someone or something without attachment, you allow it to be as it is, not as your fear demands it to be. This kind of love doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you. It doesn't drain you, it nourishes you. It doesn't imprison you, it frees you. Attachment, on the other hand, insists on guarantees. It tries to control the uncontrollable, shape the shapeless, and preserve what is destined to change. Attachment does not say, "I love you." Attachment says, "I am afraid of losing you, so I will hold on even if it hurts us both." When attachment takes hold of your life, attachment does not take root in one moment, it grows over time, like vines climbing a tree. It wraps itself around your thoughts, emotions, and decisions, shaping your life without you realizing it. Suddenly, you're fighting to keep something that is clearly slipping away. You're replaying conversations in your mind, trying to rewrite the past. You're making decisions based on fear rather than truth. You're holding on to identities that no longer match who you are. You're forcing outcomes that are not meant for you. Attachment convinces you that letting go means losing, when in reality letting go often means returning to yourself. But you don't see that yet, because the emotional grip of attachment can be powerful. It can feel like a duty, a moral obligation, a sign of devotion. You don't realize that the very thing you're holding on to is the thing that's holding you back. The physical cost of clinging. Your body knows when you're attached to something that's not aligned with your well-being, even if your mind refuses to acknowledge it. Attachment shows up physically: tension in the shoulders, knots in the stomach, tightness in the jaw, shallow breathing, restlessness. exhaustion despite sleep. Your nervous system becomes wired for alertness. You're constantly anticipating loss, rejection, or change. You begin to live in a low-grade state of anxiety, always on guard, always preparing for something to go wrong. This is because attachment creates the illusion that you must protect what you've clung to. You become the guardian of something that was never meant to be under your control in the first place. The more attached you are, the less you can relax. The more you cling, the less you breathe. The more you resist, the more you suffer. Attachment steals your peace long before you realize it has taken anything. The mental cost of clinging. Attachment also affects your mind. It distorts your thinking. It magnifies fears. It creates narratives that have nothing to do with reality. You begin to project fears onto others. Overanalyze every sign. Create expectations no one agreed to. Feel threatened by change. Interpret uncertainty as danger. Believe your worth depends on outcomes. Your mind becomes a battlefield where your true self fights against your attachments. And the longer this battle continues, the more drained you feel. Your mental clarity disappears. Your creativity dries up. Your joy becomes conditional. Your decisions become reactive. You start making choices from survival mode rather than from wisdom. Attachment convinces you that if you lose what you're holding on to, you will lose yourself. But the opposite is true. You lose yourself by holding on. The spiritual cost of clinging. On a spiritual level, attachment is a barrier between you and the truth of impermanence. It keeps you locked in illusions. It prevents you from seeing reality as it truly is. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering because it denies the nature of life itself. Everything is constantly changing: every thought, every emotion, every moment, every relationship, every experience. When you attach, you argue with impermanence. You try to freeze what is meant to flow. You try to preserve what is meant to evolve. You try to guarantee what life never promised to guarantee. Spiritual suffering arises not from change, but from refusing to accept change. Attachment says, I want things to stay the same, even if change is required for my growth. But life says, everything that grows must change. Everything that evolves must release. The more attached you are, the more you resist life's natural movement. And the more you resist, the more you suffer. Why attachment feels so hard to release? If attachment is so clearly harmful, why do we cling to it so desperately? Because attachment creates the illusion of control. Your mind tells you, if I hold on tightly enough, nothing will change. If I keep this close, I won't get hurt. If I fight hard enough, I won't lose anything. These beliefs are comforting, but they are not true. Control is an illusion. Clinging is a defense mechanism. Attachment is a survival strategy based on fear, not truth. Understanding this doesn't make letting go easy. It simply makes it possible. Because once you realize that attachment is not protecting you, but imprisoning you, something inside you softens just enough to begin. And beginning is all that is required. The power of awareness: seeing attachment clearly. The first step to releasing attachment is recognizing it. Not fighting it. Not judging it. Just seeing it. Awareness dissolves attachment the same way sunlight dissolves fog. The moment you become aware of your clinging, a shift occurs. You create a small space, just enough space to breathe, to reflect, to question. Ask yourself gently, why am I holding on so tightly? What am I afraid will happen if I release this? Has this brought me peace or suffering? Is this aligned with who I am becoming? What am I trying to control? These questions do not demand immediate answers. They simply open the door. Because the truth is this: you don't release attachment all at once, you release it one awareness at a time. The moment attachment begins to loosen, there comes a moment, a subtle, almost invisible moment when something inside you shifts. You feel a tiny crack of space between you and what you've been holding onto. That space is liberation. That space is clarity. That space is the birthplace of transformation. You realize that you can care deeply without clinging. You can love without losing yourself. You can hope without forcing outcomes. You can desire without demanding certainty. You discover that strength is not gripping, it is opening. And once you taste that freedom, even for a moment, you cannot return to the old way of living. Because attachment feels heavy once you've experienced lightness. Clinging feels suffocating once you've experienced breath. Fear feels small once you've experienced truth. The moment attachment loosens is the moment growth begins. You were never meant to carry so much. As you continue to awaken to the nature of attachment, you begin to understand something powerful. You were never designed to carry the weight of the world. You were never meant to manage every outcome. You were never meant to bend your spirit, trying to hold on to things that are not aligned with your path. Your soul is not built for gripping. Your soul is built for flow. And the more you embrace this truth, the more life begins to open. Doors appear where walls once stood. Possibilities emerge where fear once dominated. Peace enters where anxiety once lived. Attachment begins to fall away not through force, but through understanding. Understanding that you are safe without clinging. Understanding that life supports you more than you realize. Understanding that what is meant for you will find you without effort. Understanding that letting go is not losing, it is becoming. The beginning of freedom. Part 2 ends with a truth we must accept before the journey can continue. Attachment is suffering, and letting go is freedom. Not freedom from caring, but freedom from fear. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from control. Not freedom from relationships, but freedom from dependency. When you release attachment, you begin to walk through life with open hands that can receive, nurture, and bless, without gripping, trapping, or controlling. You move into a deeper relationship with reality, with yourself, with impermanence, with the flow of life that has always been guiding you, even in the moments you felt lost. Letting go begins with awareness. Freedom begins with letting go, and the journey continues from here. Part 3 Trusting Timing. Life moves at the speed of meaning. Approximately 3,000 words. There is a quiet truth woven through every spiritual tradition, every philosophical teaching, every moment of awakening in a human life. Timing is not random. Timing is revelation. And yet, timing is the one thing people trust the least. We trust effort. We trust planning. We trust strategy. We trust familiar patterns. We trust what we can predict, measure, and control. But the deeper intelligence of life, the unfolding, the synchrony, the alignment, the timing feels too mysterious for most people to surrender to. We want guarantees. We want clear paths. We want step-by-step certainty. But life rarely offers that. Instead, life offers moments that look accidental but are perfectly placed. Moments that feel inconvenient but end up being necessary. Moments that appear as delays but are actually protection. It takes wisdom to see that timing is not the enemy. It is the teacher. The conflict between ego time and life time. Every human being carries two clocks, the clock of the ego impatient, demanding, urgent, and the clock of the soul steady, intuitive, precise. The ego wants answers now. The ego wants progress now. The ego wants closure now. The ego wants outcomes now. But the soul has no interest in now. The soul is not rushed. The soul is not pressured by society's timelines. The soul is not threatened by waiting. Because the soul knows something the ego does not. What is meant for you cannot be late. What is meant for you cannot arrive early. It arrives exactly when your inner world matches the experience you are meant to receive. Everything arrives at the speed of your becoming. This is why some people meet the right opportunity at the wrong time. They weren't ready internally. This is why some people lose what they thought they wanted, because the timing was meant to break the illusion, not fulfill the desire. This is why some dreams are delayed, because they require a version of you that does not yet exist. Timing is not personal. Timing is preparation. Why waiting feels painful. Waiting is uncomfortable because it exposes everything we try to hide. When you are forced to wait, you lose the illusion of control. You feel exposed, vulnerable, uncertain. Suddenly, you're sitting face to face with your deepest fears. What if it never happens? What if I'm not enough? What if I missed my chance? What if this delay is a sign? These thoughts aren't reflections of reality. They are reflections of attachment. They are reflections of fear. They are reflections of impatience. Waiting is painful because you are forced to see yourself clearly. Waiting doesn't hurt because time is passing. Waiting hurts because you're judging yourself while time is passing. You believe you should be farther along. You believe others are ahead of you. You believe success has an expiration date. You believe life is slipping away. But nothing meaningful slips. Nothing real disappears. Nothing aligned fades without returning in a new form. Waiting is not punishment. Waiting is refinement. It shapes you into the person you need to become in order to receive what's meant for you. Life's delays are often life's protection. There are seasons when everything feels slow, painfully slow, as if the universe is ignoring your prayers, your effort, your readiness. But if you look back at your life honestly, you will notice something remarkable. The things you forced never lasted. The things you chased never fulfilled you. The things you rushed always cost you more than you expected. And the things that truly mattered, the moments of clarity, peace, alignment, opportunity, arrived when you weren't controlling anything. Life's no is often a disguised not yet. Life's not yet is often a disguised I'm preparing something better. But because you're human, because you feel deeply, because uncertainty scares you, the delay feels like rejection. Yet if timing were purely in your control, you would receive things you weren't ready to hold. You would enter rooms you weren't prepared to occupy. You would meet experiences that would overwhelm you instead of elevate you. Life does not operate on your fear. Life operates on your readiness. The human desire to outrun time. In modern culture, speed is mistaken for progress. People want fast success, fast healing, fast answers, fast certainty. But spiritual growth does not follow the speed of the world. Spiritual growth follows the pace of wisdom. You cannot rush maturity. You cannot rush clarity. You cannot rush alignment. You cannot rush the blossoming of your own soul. Everything meaningful in life grows slowly: mountains, trees, wisdom, compassion, character, healing, spiritual understanding. Even flowers bloom only when the season is right. Imagine pulling open the petals of a closed flower because you're too impatient to wait for it to bloom naturally. What happens? You destroy it. This is what many people unknowingly do to their own lives. They rush. They force. They push. They demand outcomes before the roots have even formed. Life responds not to impatience, but to readiness, trust, and non-attachment, the two wings of freedom. To trust timing is to practice non-attachment. Trust says, I believe life is guiding me, even when I don't see the path. Non-attachment says, I release the need for this to happen on my timeline. Together, trust and non-attachment create inner peace, a peace that is not dependent on circumstances but grounded in awareness. With trust, waiting becomes patience. With non-attachment, uncertainty becomes possibility. With both, life becomes less about controlling and more about aligning. When you trust timing, you stop forcing outcomes. When you trust timing, you stop comparing your path to others. When you trust timing, you stop assuming delays are failures. You realize something transformational. Your life is not behind schedule. Your soul is right on time. The moment you realize you were never behind. There comes a moment in every spiritual journey when you look back and suddenly understand every delay made sense. Every detour taught something. Every disappointment redirected you. Every closed door protected you. You begin to see the pattern beneath the surface, a pattern you were too close to recognize before. You see how timing shaped your resilience. You see how timing matured your compassion. You see how timing deepened your intuition. You see how timing strengthened your boundaries. You see how timing saved you from people, situations, and outcomes that were never meant to stay. You realize that rushing would have ruined you. You realize that waiting rebuilt you. You realize that time was not your enemy, it was your ally. And in that moment, gratitude replaces frustration. Understanding replaces fear. Clarity replaces confusion. This is the moment you trust life deeply for the first time. Life moves at the speed of meaning, not moments. Humans measure life in moments, seconds, minutes, hours, days, years. But the universe measures life in meaning. A single moment can transform you. A single conversation can shift your entire path. A single insight can uproot years of confusion. A single decision can redirect your destiny. This is why timing cannot be forced, because meaning cannot be forced. You will not receive clarity a second before you're ready to understand it. You will not receive peace a second before your spirit can hold it. You will not receive the next chapter until you've outgrown the previous one. Meaning takes time. Meaning takes growth. Meaning takes becoming. And life refuses to rush meaning. Your pace is not too slow, it is exact. One of the greatest sources of suffering is believing that you're behind in success, behind in healing, behind in relationships, behind in purpose. But Buddhism teaches that comparison is illusion. Each life unfolds in its own rhythm, its own tempo, its own sacred sequence of experiences. A river does not envy another river. A mountain does not hurry because another mountain is taller. A flower does not panic because another flower blooms earlier. You should not compare your timing to anyone else's. Every delay in your life has a purpose. Every pause is integration. Every slowdown is preparation. Every stillness is alignment. Your pace is not slow. Your pace is intentional. The peace that comes from trusting timing. When you finally release the need to control when things happen, something extraordinary happens. Your entire nervous system relaxes. You stop waking up with anxiety. You stop feeling rushed. You stop chasing outcomes. You stop punishing yourself for not being far enough. Instead, you begin to live in rhythm with life, instead of racing against it. You start hearing the subtle guidance that was always there. You start noticing synchronicities and signs. You start recognizing when something is aligned and when it's not. You begin to trust that if something hasn't arrived, it's not because you're failing, it's because the timing isn't aligned with the version of you who is meant to receive it. Peace doesn't come from getting what you want. Peace comes from trusting what is meant. When you stop rushing, you start receiving. There is a powerful shift that happens the moment you stop trying to force timing. Life begins to open. Opportunities appear where there were none. Solutions emerge that once seemed impossible. People enter your life with perfect precision. Paths unfold naturally instead of being forced. This is because you have finally stepped into alignment, the place where your internal state matches the experiences you are seeking. Alignment is not forced. Alignment is allowed. And everything meant for you arrives easily once alignment is reached. You don't chase it. You don't fight for it. You don't beg for it. It arrives. Because it was always meant to. The lesson at the heart of timing. At the end of all your waiting, all your yearning, all your impatience, all your frustration, all your disappointment, you will discover the wisdom that was hidden underneath. Every delay life is not happening to you. Life is happening for you. Timing wasn't denying you. Timing was shaping you. Timing wasn't punishing you. Timing was positioning you. Timing wasn't holding you back. Timing was preparing the path ahead. If you had received what you wanted too early, you would have sabotaged it. If you had received what you begged for prematurely, it would have collapsed. If you had met certain opportunities before you matured, they would have slipped away. Timing is not accidental. Timing is protection. Timing is alignment. Timing is intelligence. Timing is love, the truth that sets you free. At the end of part 3, you are meant to understand a truth that frees the mind, expands the heart, and anchors the spirit. You do not need to rush. You do not need to panic. You do not need to fear time running out. Your life cannot be late. Your destiny cannot be delayed. Your path cannot be derailed. You are not behind. You are becoming. And the more you trust timing, the more your life begins to flow with a grace that feels almost miraculous. What is meant for you is already moving in your direction. And it will arrive not when you demand it, but when you are fully ready to receive it with open hands, with steady breath, and with a peaceful heart. Part 4: The Art of Allowing, Creating Space for What Truly Belongs. Approximately 3,000 words. There comes a moment in every journey of awakening when you begin to realize something profound. Not everything you want is meant to be fought for. Not everything you desire is meant to be chased. Not everything you cling to is meant to stay. Some things, the most important things, enter your life, not because you forced them, but because you made room for them. This is the art of allowing. Allowing is not passive. It is not resignation. It is not giving up your dreams or settling for less. Allowing is alignment. Allowing is trust. Allowing is cooperation with the deeper flow of life. Allowing means you stop trying to drag the universe behind you and instead begin moving with it. It means you recognize the difference between what requires effort and what requires surrender. It means you stop forcing what is resisting and start inviting what is aligned. Allowing is a spiritual posture, open, receptive, calm, grounded, a posture that says, I no longer need to control outcomes. I trust what is meant for me. I release what tries to leave. I welcome what arises naturally. And with that shift, everything changes. The difference between forcing and allowing. If life were a door, forcing would be trying to shove it open with all your strength. Allowing would be stepping back and letting the door swing open on its own. Most people force their way through life. They force relationships to work long after the connection has evaporated. They force themselves into roles that drain them. They force outcomes that their soul has already outgrown. They force timing, force conversations, force healing, force transformation. Force becomes a way of living, a way of surviving. But force exhausts you. Force tightens your body. Force narrows your mind. Force blinds you to better paths. Force says this must happen, or I cannot be okay. Allowing says I will be okay, and what is meant for me will happen. Forcing is an act of fear. Allowing is an act of faith. One contracts you. The other expands you. One suffocates you. The other liberates you. Why we force what isn't meant to be. People force outcomes because they do not trust themselves. They do not trust life. They do not trust timing. They do not trust the unknown. Many were raised to believe that success comes only through struggle, that love comes only through sacrifice, that progress comes only through doing everything alone. But in spiritual truth, struggle is not a sign of alignment, it is often a sign of resistance. What resists is not always meant to be controlled. What resists is often meant to be released. But humans cling to what resists because resistance looks like challenge, and challenge looks like something to conquer. So we push harder. We try to power through. We try to force the universe to cooperate with our plans. And in doing so, we miss the guidance that life is offering in every moment, guidance that is subtle, gentle, and almost always leading us towards something better than what we're trying to force. Allowing does not mean you stop working for what matters. It means you stop fighting what does not. The spiritual practice of making space. Space is not emptiness. Space is invitation. If your hands are full, you cannot receive what the universe wants to give you. If your mind is cluttered, you cannot hear intuitive guidance. If your heart is crowded with old attachments, you cannot feel new possibilities. Space is sacred. Buddhist teachings describe emptiness not as a void but as freedom, the clearing that allows wisdom to arise. When you create space in your life, you begin to notice what truly matters and what has been draining you. You begin to see which dreams uplift your spirit and which ones were imposed by fear, expectation, or ego. Making space is not about removing everything. It is about removing what removes you from yourself. It's about clearing internal noise so truth can speak. It's about clearing emotional clutter so peace can settle. It's about clearing old patterns so life can move again. Making space allows what is meant to find you. Why allowing feels unnatural at first? Allowing feels uncomfortable because it requires trust, and trust requires surrender. Surrender requires humility. Humility requires honesty. And honesty forces us to confront what we have been avoiding. Allowing asks you to stop doing something, to stop controlling, planning, gripping, demanding. But humans feel safer when their hands are busy, their minds are busy, their hearts are busy. Allowing feels like releasing the steering wheel in a storm. It feels like letting go of the rope during a tug of war. It feels like walking forward without a map. But here is what you must understand: you were never steering the storm. You were never in control of the tug of war, and the map you cling to only shows where you have already been, not where you are meant to go. Allowing feels unnatural because you were taught to lead life instead of partner with it. But life is not an opponent. Life is not an obstacle. Life is not something to conquer. Life is something to align with. Once you realize this, allowing becomes natural. Effort becomes graceful. Movement becomes intuitive. You stop forcing your life into a shape it was never meant to take. The wisdom of letting things flow. There is a wisdom in nature that humans often forget. Rivers do not force their direction, they follow the path of least resistance. Trees do not force growth, they grow when the season is right. Oceans do not force waves, they rise and fall according to the moon. Nature is effortless. Nature allows. In Buddhism, effort is not abandoned, it is refined. There is right effort, which aligns with truth, and wrong effort, which struggles against reality. When you practice allowing, you begin to live with right effort. You begin to work with life rather than against it. You begin to move in harmony with the flow of events instead of resisting them. Flow does not mean life is always easy. It means life becomes coherent. You stop fighting currents. You stop forcing doors. You stop clinging to outcomes that were never meant for you. Allowing is the art of stepping into the river instead of trying to reshape it. The emotional relief of stopping the fight. There is a moment, a sacred, liberating moment, when you stop fighting for something that has been draining you. You stop trying to make it work. You stop trying to change it. You stop trying to convince yourself that you need it. You stop trying to hold on to something that has already let go of you energetically. And in that moment, a wave of relief washes over you. Your shoulders drop. Your breath deepens. Your mind quiets. Your heart softens. It feels like finally setting down a suitcase you've been carrying for miles. Nothing external changed in that moment. The job, the relationship, the situation, the unanswered questions all remain the same. But internally, you shifted. You surrendered force. You chose ease. You chose truth over fear. And for the first time in a long time, you feel free. This freedom does not come from gaining something. It comes from stopping the fight. Allowing does not mean apathy. Some misunderstand allowing as indifference, as if releasing control means not caring. But allowing is not apathy. Allowing is awareness. Apathy says, I don't care what happens. Allowing says, I trust what happens. Apathy shuts down emotion. Allowing opens emotion. Apathy disconnects you from life. Allowing connects you more deeply to life. Allowing means you still show up. You still act. You still care. You still move toward what matters. But you no longer demand that life bends to your will. You no longer cling to outcomes. You no longer attempt to control the uncontrollable. You take aligned action, not desperate action. You take intuitive steps, not fear-based steps. You remain open, not rigid. Allowing is emotional and spiritual maturity, the art of listening to life. When you stop forcing and begin allowing, you develop a new sensitivity, a new ability to listen. Not with your ears, but with your inner awareness. Life communicates constantly through ease, through resistance, through synchronicity, through intuition, through unexpected opportunities, through sudden closures, through inner peace, through inner discomfort. When you are forcing, you miss these signals. When you are allowing, you hear them clearly. Allowing requires listening. Listening requires stillness. Stillness requires presence. Presence reveals truth. Most people do not lack guidance, they lack the stillness to recognize it. When you allow, you create space to hear what life has been saying all along. Invitation versus imposition. There is a beautiful distinction in spiritual life. What is meant for you arrives as invitation. What is not meant for you arrives as imposition. What is meant for you feels like ease, clarity, expansion, curiosity, alignment, flow. What is not meant for you feels like a friction, confusion, contraction, resistance, exhaustion, chaos. Allowing helps you distinguish the two. You begin to trust your body's signals. You begin to recognize energy shifts. You begin to respect emotional boundaries. You begin to understand when life is saying yes and when life is saying no. You stop pushing when the answer is no. You stop hesitating when the answer is yes. You move with life, not against it. Allowing and the law of empty hands. There is a profound spiritual law that governs all paths of awakening. You cannot receive with closed hands. Imagine trying to catch rainfall with clenched fists. Imagine trying to gather sunlight while gripping tightly. Imagine trying to welcome new blessings while refusing to release old burdens. Closed hands say, I am afraid to let go. Open hands say, I am ready to receive. Allowing requires open hands. Allowing requires trust in what comes and trust in what goes. When your hands open, even slightly, life begins to place new things into them, new insights, new opportunities, new clarity, new peace. Allowing creates space for miracles. Why some doors only open through allowing? There are doors in life that no amount of force will open. Not because you're unworthy. Not because you're unlucky. Not because you're behind. But because the door requires alignment, not effort. Some doors open only when your energy shifts. Your intention clears. Your fear dissolves. Your attachments loosen. Your identity evolves. Your heart expands. These doors recognize spiritual readiness, not force. These doors respond to who you are, not how hard you push. Allowing transforms you into the version of yourself who is capable of walking through such doors. The freedom of living with open palms. Life feels radically different when you stop gripping. You feel lighter. You breathe deeper. You stop fearing loss because you understand that nothing real can be lost. You stop fighting change because you understand that change is how life speaks. You stop resisting uncertainty because you understand that uncertainty is where possibility lives. Allowing becomes a way of life, a peaceful, empowered, intuitive way of being. You begin to say, I release what pulls me down. I welcome what lifts me up. I trust what is unfolding. I open myself to what is meant. And in this openness, you discover something stunning. Life has been trying to help you all along. The truth at the heart of allowing. Part 4 leaves you with a truth that carries the weight of centuries of wisdom. What is pushed will break. What is forced will resist. What is allowed will flow. Allowing is not weakness. Allowing is wisdom. It is the wisdom to know when to act and when to step back, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to pursue and when to release, when to hold on and when to let go. Allowing is the art of trusting the intelligence that moves through all things, the intelligence that shapes seasons, turns tides, grows forests, heals hearts, and guides souls. Allowing is the art of living in harmony with life rather than in battle with it. And when you master allowing, you master peace. Part 5: Inner Peace through Release, letting go of what hurts. There comes a point in every human life when you look at the weight you're carrying and realize, often with a mixture of shock and sadness, that most of it didn't come from the outside world. The stress you hold in your jaw, the tension in your chest, the heaviness in your stomach, the tightness in your breath, the anxiety humming just beneath the surface. These are not random sensations. They are the physical echoes of emotional burdens you've been carrying far too long. Burden from the past, burden from expectations, burden from guilt, regret, fear, shame, burden from memories that still sting, even though the moment ended long ago. Peace isn't something you find. Peace is something you uncover once you release what is hiding it. And the more you awaken spiritually, the more you realize pain does not leave your life when you avoid it. Pain leaves your life when you release it. Release is not forgetting. Release is not denying. Release is not pretending the wound didn't happen. Release is acknowledging the story without allowing it to define you anymore. Release is choosing freedom over familiar hurt. Release is letting your heart breathe again. The burden of emotional memory. Your body remembers everything you try to ignore. The argument you dismissed. The heartbreak you minimized. The betrayal you justified. The disappointment you carried silently. The dreams that never happened. The unresolved endings that still echo. People believe that time heals emotional wounds, but time only buries them. Healing happens not through time, but through release. If you pay attention, you'll notice how emotional pain lives in your body, regret sits in the chest. Anger tightens the shoulders. Shame curls the spine inward. Fear sinks into the stomach. Sadness weighs down the eyes. Resentment drains the breath. Your body becomes the storage unit for everything your mind avoids feeling. But the body can only hold so much. Eventually, the weight becomes too heavy. Eventually, the pain demands to be acknowledged. Eventually, the heart insists on release. And when that moment comes, you cannot outrun yourself anymore. You cannot hide from the past. You cannot keep pretending that you're fine. The only path forward is through. The difference between hurt and suffering. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Pain is what happens. Suffering is the story you continue to tell about what happened. Pain is the event. Suffering is the attachment to the meaning you gave the event. Pain ends. Suffering repeats. When you replay the past over and over, you keep the wound alive. When you cling to what someone did or didn't do, you reopen the injury. When you hold resentment, you drink poison hoping it hurts someone else. Suffering is not caused by life. Suffering is caused by holding on to life after it's gone. To stop suffering, you must release the story, not the truth of what happened, but the emotional grip it has on you. This is where Buddhism offers a profound teaching. You cannot change the past, but you can change your relationship with it. And by changing your relationship with the past, you free yourself from its emotional consequences. The spiritual necessity of release. Release is not a luxury. Release is a necessity. You cannot build a peaceful life on top of emotional debris. You cannot grow while holding grudges. You cannot heal while clinging to stories that justify your hurt. You cannot awaken while your heart is still carrying yesterday's pain. Release does not mean erasing history. Release means integrating history without being imprisoned by it. It means saying, I accept that this happened. I refuse to let it define me. I choose peace instead of pain. I choose freedom instead of attachment. I choose to move forward, not live backward. Release is a spiritual cleansing, a returning to your natural state of peace. Why people fear releasing pain? Strangely, people often cling to their pain more fiercely than anything else. Why? Because pain becomes identity. Because pain becomes safety. Because pain becomes familiar. People fear release for many reasons. 1. If I let go, it means the pain didn't matter. But letting go doesn't erase the significance. It simply stops the past from controlling the present too. If I let go, I lose the story I tell myself. Yes, and that story is what's keeping you stuck. 3. If I let go, I have to face who I am without the wound. And that is exactly where freedom begins. 4. If I let go, I'm afraid it will happen again. Holding the hurt does not protect you. It only keeps you wounded. 5. If I let go, I won't know who I am anymore. You are not your pain. You are who you become when you rise from it. Release feels frightening not because it's harmful, but because it leads you into a version of yourself you have never met, a version free from the burdens you've carried for years. The liberation of forgiveness without reconciliation. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood forms of release. Forgiveness does not mean you approve of what happened. You excuse harmful behavior. You reopen the door. You deny the damage. You forget the lesson. Forgiveness means I choose to stop carrying this pain. I choose to stop bleeding from an old wound. I choose to stop giving someone else control over my emotional world. Forgiveness is not about the other person. Forgiveness is about your freedom. It severs the energetic cord between you and what harmed you. It closes the emotional loop that keeps you reliving the moment. It creates space for healing to flow in. Forgiveness is release. Release is peace. Peace is your natural state. Releasing regret, the past you can't fix but can transform. Regret is one of the heaviest emotions a human can carry. It arises from the belief that you should have known better, done better, loved better, chosen better. Regret is the voice of perfectionism. Regret is the voice of shame. Regret is the belief that your past self was supposed to have the wisdom of your present self. But regret dissolves when you understand a simple truth. You did not know then what you know now. You acted with the awareness you had at the time. You made choices from the level of consciousness you were capable of. Regret does not heal you. Regret only keeps you trapped in a time that no longer exists. Release happens when you finally say, I forgive the version of me who didn't know better. I release the regret that has kept me from living fully. I choose growth over punishment. And in that moment, the emotional weight begins to lift. Releasing stories, the mind's addiction to what should have been. One of the main reasons people suffer is because they cling to stories in their mind. It should have worked out. It should not have ended. It should have been different. I should have been better. They should have stayed. They should have understood. These stories create suffering because they argue with reality. Reality is not the enemy. Resistance is the enemy. Release begins the moment you stop arguing with what happened. It isn't easy. It requires honesty, humility, and courage. But when you stop insisting that the past should have been different, You reclaim the energy that was trapped in resistance. You reclaim your peace. You reclaim your power. You begin to live again. The body as a sacred compass, how release feels physically. Release is not just emotional or spiritual, it is profoundly physical. When you truly release, your body responds, your breath deepens, your muscles loosen, your stomach softens, your jaw unclenches, your shoulders drop. It feels like warmth moving through you. It feels like an internal exhale. It feels like spaciousness where tightness used to be. You may even cry, not because you are breaking, but because you are finally unbreaking. Tears are not a sign of weakness. Tears are emotional release in liquid form. Tears are the body saying, I'm ready to let this go. When the body releases, the mind follows. When the mind releases, the soul expands. Release is healing for all levels of your being. The practice of gentle unclenching. Most people do not realize how tightly they hold their emotional world until they begin consciously releasing. Release is not dramatic. Release is not one moment. Release is a series of softening, a loosening of the grip, a relaxing of the heart, a surrendering of the story, a willingness to feel instead of avoid, a willingness to accept instead of resist. Release happens in moments, a moment of clarity, a moment of humility, a moment of exhaustion, a moment of awakening, a moment of choosing peace. Every moment of release is a moment of returning to yourself. The gift of peace that arrives after release. Something extraordinary happens when you release what hurts. Your inner world shifts. A quietness settles inside you, not emptiness, but openness. Your thoughts lose their sharpness. Your breathing slows and softens. Your energy returns. Your intuition becomes audible again. Peace doesn't rush in like a storm. It enters like dawn, slowly, gently, naturally. You start noticing beauty again. You start feeling gratitude again. You start experiencing joy without fear again. You start seeing possibilities where, before you saw only pain. And perhaps the most profound shift of all, you begin to feel like yourself again. The self who existed before the wound. The self who you forgot existed. The self who is untouched by pain, unburdened by the past, unafraid of the future. Release does not change what happened. Release changes who you are in relationship to what happened. And that is the essence of healing. The circle closes. What once hurt now teaches. When you release pain, you gain perspective. You begin to understand that pain was not a mistake. Pain was a messenger. Pain was a teacher. Pain was a catalyst. It pushed you toward self-awareness. It pushed you toward honesty. It pushed you toward awakening. It pushed you toward compassion. It pushed you toward peace. Release helps you see that the wound was not the end of your story, it was the beginning of a deeper chapter. As the Buddha taught, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. But wisdom is inevitable for those who release suffering. Once your suffering dissolves, wisdom takes its place. And wisdom is far more valuable than never having been hurt. The truth at the heart of release. Part 5 ends with a truth that holds the essence of every spiritual teaching on healing. You do not release the past to erase it. You release the past so you can finally live. Your peace is not in controlling life. Your peace is in releasing what tries to control you. Your strength is not in holding on. Your strength is in letting go. Your healing is not in resisting what happened. Your healing is in allowing it to transform you. Release is not the end. Release is the rebirth. And once you release what hurts, you make space for what heals. Part 6, returning to yourself. Clarity after letting go. There is a moment after deep release when the world feels strangely quiet. Not empty, just quiet. Not lonely, just spacious. Not numb, just still. It is the stillness that follows a storm, the kind that feels almost sacred. You may not recognize this moment at first because you've spent so long being overwhelmed, overstimulated, overworked, overextended. But slowly, gently, as the emotional dust settles, something becomes unmistakably clear. You have made your way back to yourself. For the first time in a long time, you feel your own presence again, not the version shaped by fear, by obligation, by pain, or by expectations, but the version that existed before the world taught you to become someone else. Letting go strips away everything false. What remains is the truth of who you are. Returning to yourself is not a single event. It is a rediscovery, gradual, delicate, deeply personal, and profoundly spiritual. The space after release where you finally hear your own voice. When you release what weighs you down, you create space. Not just physical space, not just mental space, but emotional and spiritual space, the kind of space you didn't know you were missing. In that space, something important happens. You begin hearing your own voice again. Not the voice conditioned by past wounds. Not the voice shaped by others' approval. Not the voice that spills from anxiety or attachment. But the voice that rises from the quiet center of your being, the voice that has always been there, waiting patiently beneath the noise. This voice does not shout. It does not demand. It does not panic. It speaks with clarity, with truth, with simplicity. It says things like, I want peace, I want alignment, I want authenticity, I want joy, I want rest, I want truth. And perhaps the most powerful of all, I am ready to return to myself. This is the beginning of inner clarity, the clarity that emerges only when you stop drowning in emotional clutter. The person you were before the pain is still here. One of the greatest misunderstandings about healing is the belief that pain permanently changes who you are in a way that cannot be undone. People often say, I'll never be the same, as if that is inherently tragic, but the truth is more nuanced. Yes, pain changes you, but not in the way people fear. Pain removes illusions. Pain strips false identities. Pain reveals what truly matters. Pain exposes what was never real. And once the pain dissolves through release, you do not lose yourself, you find yourself. Your softness returns. Your creativity returns. Your natural joy returns. Your intuition becomes louder. Your compassion deepens. Your boundaries become clearer. The version of you before the pain isn't gone. It was simply hidden beneath layers of protection. When you let go, you peel back those layers and rediscover the person you were meant to be, a person wiser, more grounded, more aware, and more connected to your inner truth. Clarity is the first gift of inner returning. Clarity doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives in moments small but powerful. A moment when your mind feels quiet for the first time in years. A moment when you suddenly understand why something had to end. A moment when your body feels lighter, as if an invisible weight has lifted. A moment when your heart feels open rather than guarded. These moments accumulate, and over time, they shift your inner landscape. Clarity becomes your default instead of confusion. Peace becomes your baseline instead of chaos. Truth becomes natural instead of frightening. Clarity reveals what was always there, but was previously blurred by emotional noise. Clarity reveals your path. Clarity reveals your desires. Clarity reveals what nourishes you and what drains you. Most importantly, clarity reveals who you are without fear. The inner compass returns. When you've spent years living through pain, people-pleasing, attachment, or survival mode, your inner compass becomes muted. You stop trusting yourself. You stop listening to yourself. You stop believing that your intuition is real. But once you let go and begin returning to yourself, your inner compass reactivates. Suddenly, decisions feel easier. Boundaries feel natural. Desires feel valid. Truth feels safe. Intuition is no longer a whisper you ignore, it becomes a guide you follow. Your inner compass becomes stronger than external noise. It becomes louder than fear. It becomes more reliable than logic. Your compass says this is right. This is wrong. This is aligned. This is draining. This nourishes me. This harms me. This path is meant for me. And you trust it because it comes from within, not from fear or conditioning. The return of self-honesty. When you are disconnected from yourself, honesty feels threatening. Honesty requires acknowledging truths you may not feel ready for. Honesty requires confronting your own patterns. Honesty requires courage. But once you have let go, honesty becomes liberating. You begin accepting truths gracefully. I stayed too long. I ignored my intuition. I clung to what had already ended. I sacrificed my peace for someone else's comfort. I didn't listen to my body. I was afraid to be alone. These realizations do not break you. They free you. You cannot return to yourself without honesty about what hurt you, honesty about what healed you, and honesty about what you truly want now. Self-honesty is not self-blame. Self-honesty is self-liberation. The return of emotional balance. As you let go and return to yourself, your emotional world stabilizes. You stop cycling between extremes. You stop becoming overwhelmed by small triggers. You stop feeling lost in your own mind. Instead, emotions begin moving through you instead of getting stuck in you. Sadness comes and goes. Joy comes and goes. Fear comes and goes. Peace comes and stays longer than before. You become less reactive and more responsive. Less chaotic and more centered. Less overwhelmed and more grounded. Your emotions stop controlling you because you stop clinging to your emotions. This is emotional maturity, the ability to feel deeply without drowning in the feeling. When emotions move freely, clarity emerges naturally. The return of desire, true desire, not fear-based desire. When you are disconnected from yourself, your desires come from fear, scarcity, insecurity, and external expectations. But when you return to yourself, your desires shift. They become quieter but clearer, softer but truer, less urgent but more aligned. You begin wanting things that nourish your spirit rather than just soothe your wounds. You desire peace more than validation, authenticity more than approval, quality more than quantity, stillness more than distraction, connection more than attention, alignment more than achievement, meaning more than noise. Your desires reveal your true self, the self beneath the surface, the self that was always waiting for you to slow down enough to hear its voice. This is the beginning of living intentionally. The return of boundaries as self-respect. When you return to yourself, boundaries stop feeling selfish. They begin feeling sacred. You no longer tolerate what drains you. You no longer justify what harms you. You no longer shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You no longer carry emotional labor that isn't yours. Boundaries become a natural expression of self-respect. Not walls, not defenses, but expressions of truth. This is okay for me. This is not okay for me. This brings peace. This brings chaos. I choose this. I release this. Boundaries are not about controlling others, they are about honoring yourself. When you honor yourself, you return to yourself. The return of stillness. There is a stillness that emerges only after release, a stillness that feels like the first deep breath after years of shallow breathing. This stillness is not laziness. This stillness is not numbness. This stillness is not detachment from life. Stillness is presence. Stillness is awareness. Stillness is wholeness. Stillness allows you to finally feel your own energy again, without interference from stress, fear, or attachment. In stillness, your mind becomes spacious. Your heart becomes gentle. Your intuition becomes clear. Stillness is where your true self lives. Stillness is where your wisdom activates. Stillness is where you remember what matters. Returning to yourself is returning to stillness, the return of gratitude. Something unexpected happens when you return to yourself. You begin feeling gratitude again in places where gratitude once felt impossible. You feel thankful for peace, thankful for clarity, Thankful for the lessons embedded in the pain. Thankful for the strength you gained through struggle. Thankful for the boundaries you discovered through loss. Thankful for the wisdom that replaced confusion. Thankful for life itself, even the difficult parts. Gratitude becomes a spiritual practice, not a forced affirmation, not a superficial exercise, but a genuine response of the heart. Gratitude signals that the heart is healing. Gratitude signals that the soul has returned home. Gratitude signals that you are ready for the next chapter. The return of trust in yourself, in life, in the unseen. Trust is something you lose when you lose yourself. Trust is something you regain when you return to yourself. You begin trusting your intuition again. You begin trusting your decisions again. You begin trusting your ability to navigate life again. You begin trusting your worth, your voice, your boundaries, your path. Most importantly, you begin trusting life again. Not because life is predictable, but because you are now aligned with truth. You trust that timing supports your growth. You trust that endings protect you. You trust that beginnings arise when you're ready. You trust that the universe is not against you, it is guiding you. This trust becomes the foundation for everything that comes next. The return of peace, the real you emerging. Peace is not something you chase anymore. Peace is something you become. Peace becomes your baseline, not your reward. Peace becomes your natural state, not your struggle. Peace becomes who you are without fear or attachment clouding your vision. You realize, I do not need chaos to feel alive. I do not need validation to feel worthy. I do not need control to feel safe. I do not need anything external to feel whole. Peace is not the absence of challenge. Peace is the absence of inner conflict. You feel calm not because life is perfect, but because you are no longer resisting life. This is the greatest sign that you have returned to yourself. The truth at the heart of returning. Part 6 ends with a truth that becomes the compass for the rest of your spiritual journey. Letting go does not leave you empty. Letting go leaves you with yourself. Your true self. Your grounded self. Your awakened self. Your peaceful self. Returning to yourself is not a luxury, it is your destiny. Everything you released was standing between you and your own clarity. Everything you let go of was blocking your intuition. Everything that fell away was clearing the path back to who you really are. The journey is far from over. But for the first time in a long time, you are walking forward as yourself, not as your wounds, not as your fear, not as your past, but as the person you were always meant to become. Part 7, Living Without Fear, the Freedom of Non-Attachment. Approximately 3,000 words. Fear is the silent architect behind so many choices people make without realizing it. It shapes decisions, relationships, ambitions, behaviors, and even identities, often in ways that feel logical, responsible, or necessary. Yet beneath the surface, these choices are driven not by truth, but by fear of loss, fear of change, fear of uncertainty, or fear of being vulnerable. To live without fear does not mean eliminating fear from your life. It means no longer letting fear lead your life. To live without fear is to walk through the world with openness rather than tension, curiosity rather than control, trust rather than anxiety. It is to participate in life rather than defend yourself from it. Fear is not the enemy. Clinging to fear is the enemy. And the gateway out of fear is non-attachment. Non-attachment is not detachment. It is not coldness, numbness, indifference, or apathy. Non-attachment is the ability to love fully, participate fully, give fully without needing to control what happens next. It is freedom in its purest form. The invisible prisons fear creates. Fear creates walls long before you realize they're there. Fear whispers, don't try, you might fail. Don't love, you might lose. Don't speak, you might be judged. Don't hope, you might get disappointed. Don't change, it might get worse. Fear keeps you small. Fear keeps you predictable. Fear keeps you using yesterday's strategies in a life that's evolving today. Fear convinces you that safety comes from clinging to people, clinging to identities, clinging to routines, clinging to outcomes, clinging to what feels familiar. But clinging is not safety. Clinging is the cage. When you cling, your emotional world shrinks. Your choices shrink. Your creativity shrinks. Your joy shrinks. Your trust in yourself shrinks, because clinging is founded on one belief: I cannot handle change. And the truth is the opposite. Everything you are today came from change. Everything you will become tomorrow depends on it. Fear tries to protect you, but it protects you from life itself. What it means to live without fear. Living without fear does not mean lacking fear. It means moving with courage through fear, with awareness through discomfort, with openness through uncertainty. Living without fear means you trust yourself. You trust life. You trust your ability to adapt. You trust that what is meant for you will not require gripping. You trust that loss does not end you. You trust that change is not danger, but evolution. Living without fear is not reckless. It is responsible to your soul, responsible to your growth, responsible to your truth. Fear shrinks you. Non-attachment expands you. Non-attachment, the antidote to fear. Non-attachment does not mean avoiding love, avoiding desire, or avoiding commitment. It means not clinging to anything that is meant to evolve. It means allowing something to enter your life with gratitude and allowing it to leave your life with grace. Non-attachment is the spiritual understanding that everything is borrowed moments. Relationships, seasons, success, clarity, certainty, even your identity. All of it changes. All of it transforms. All of it shifts as life unfolds. Non-attachment says, I cherish this, but I do not own it. I love this, but I do not cling to it. I welcome this, but I do not depend on it for my worth. Fear says, I must keep this or I will break. Non-attachment says, I will remain whole even if life changes. Fear attaches. Love allows. Wisdom releases. The freedom of not clinging. Imagine walking through life with open hands instead of clenched fists. Imagine waking up without the fear of losing something. Imagine loving without calculating risks. Imagine working toward dreams without the pressure of needing a specific outcome. Imagine showing up authentically without fear of judgment. Imagine believing that what is meant for you will flow toward you naturally. This is the freedom non-attachment brings. Clinging creates fear. What if it ends? What if I lose it? What if it changes? Non-attachment creates peace. If it is meant for me, it will stay. If it is not, I release it. When you stop clinging, life becomes less threatening and more inviting. Every moment becomes lighter. Every experience becomes richer. Every choice becomes clearer. You begin to live life rather than brace yourself for it. The root of fear, losing what you think you need. Most fears come from one root belief: if I lose this, I won't be okay. This belief attaches itself to many things: a relationship, a job, a dream, an identity, a possession, a plan, a version of yourself, a perception others have of you. But this belief is an illusion. You have survived every loss in your life. You have risen after every setback. You have adapted through every change. You have become stronger after every ending. You are still here. You are still growing. You are still becoming. Fear underestimates your resilience. Non-attachment reveals it. The courage to release control. Fear creates illusion. Control sustains illusion. Non-attachment dissolves illusion. People cling to control because they believe it prevents loss. But control does not prevent loss. Control prevents life. Control makes you rigid. Control makes you anxious. Control makes you distrustful. Control makes you exhausted. The more you control, the more you fear losing control. It becomes a cycle that traps your spirit. Non-attachment teaches the opposite: release the illusion of control. Trust the intelligence of life. Let go of the idea that you must manage everything. You do not need to control what is aligned. You cannot control what is not. The moment you stop controlling, life begins to guide you. The shift from fear to trust. Fear asks, what if everything goes wrong? Trust asks, what if everything goes right? Fear imagines loss. Trust imagines possibility. Fear is based on memories. Trust is based on awareness. Fear comes from the mind. Trust comes from the soul. The shift from fear to trust happens the moment you accept that uncertainty is not the enemy. Uncertainty is life's greatest canvas. Uncertainty is where growth happens. Uncertainty is where new opportunities emerge. Uncertainty is where your true self is revealed. Uncertainty is where life becomes interesting. Non-attachment teaches you to trust uncertainty rather than fear it. The liberation of accepting impermanence. Impermanence is not just a Buddhist teaching, it is the rhythm of existence. Anything that begins must eventually change. Anything that changes must eventually transform. Anything that transforms opens the door for something new. Part 8. When life redirects you. Understanding the gift of detours. Life rarely unfolds in a straight line. You imagine that the path ahead will be smooth, predictable, and aligned with your plans. You picture the timeline, the milestones, the outcomes you believe will bring fulfillment. You set goals with conviction, map your future with determination, and convince yourself that if you work hard enough, life will reward you exactly as you imagined. And then the detour comes. Sudden, unexpected, unwanted, disorienting. Sometimes it arrives softly, in the form of subtle shifts that nudge you in a new direction. Other times it arrives like a storm that tears apart everything you believed was stable. Either way, a detour always carries the same message: this is not your path anymore. Detours are not random. Detours are not punishments. Detours are not signs of failure. Detours are life's way of protecting you from roads that no longer lead to your becoming. They redirect you away from what your ego desires and toward what your soul needs. They interrupt what is comfortable to make space for what is aligned. They break your illusions so you can finally see truth. A detour is not the end of your path. A detour is the path. The moment a detour appears. Detours often appear at the peak of your certainty. When you believe you finally know what you want. When you believe you have everything planned. When you believe the road ahead is solid. Then something shifts. Your job becomes unstable. Your plans fall apart. Your expectations collapse. Your identity dissolves. Your direction becomes unclear. You stand at the edge of your old life, feeling confused, frustrated, even afraid. You ask questions that echo in the empty spaces inside you. What happened? Why now? What did I do wrong? Why would life take this away from me? Where am I supposed to go from here? In that moment, your ego sees only loss. But your soul senses something different: a subtle, almost imperceptible opening. A new doorway. A new path. A new chapter. A new version of yourself calling from somewhere ahead. The detour is not an interruption. It is an invitation. Why detours feel like failure? Humans are conditioned to believe that deviation from the plan means failure. This belief is deeply rooted in societal narratives that equate worth with achievement, stability, predictability, and straight-line success. If the path changes, the mind panics. Suddenly, fear introduces itself as logic. You wasted your time. You're falling behind. You're starting over. You're losing everything. You should have known better. You're being punished. But none of these thoughts are true. The ego sees the detour as destruction. The soul sees the detour as redirection. You did not fail. You evolved. And evolution requires change, real, uncomfortable change. Evolution requires releasing old forms to make space for new ones. Evolution requires walking away from paths that can no longer carry you toward who you are becoming. Failure is not the detour. Failure is ignoring the detour and staying where your soul is no longer alive. The spiritual purpose of redirection. In Buddhist teachings, life is seen as a continuous unfolding of fluid, dynamic series of causes and conditions, constantly adjusting as your consciousness transforms. When your energy changes, your path must change. When your awareness deepens, your direction must shift. When your heart awakens, your environment must evolve. Redirection is the evidence that your inner world is moving toward a new vibration. Redirection happens when you outgrow an environment. You outgrow a dream. You outgrow a role. You outgrow a version of yourself. Life does not wait for you to catch up. Life clears what cannot come with you. From the outside, the detour looks disruptive. From the inside, it is alignment in motion. A detour is life stepping in when your free will has taken you as far as it can go. It is the universe saying, you deserve more than what you're clinging to. Trust this redirection. The anatomy of a detour. What is really happening? A detour unfolds in layers. 1. The collapse. Something ends. A path closes. A structure breaks. Your ego calls this loss, but spiritually, this is clearing. 2. The void. A period of not knowing. Uncertainty, confusion, stillness. This void is not a punishment, it is integration. 3. The reorientation. New thoughts arise. New desires surface. New curiosities appear. You begin to feel the pull towards something unfamiliar but enticing. 4. The alignment. Life begins offering signs, synchronicities, intuitive nudges. Opportunities appear that match your new frequency. 5. The emergence. You step into a life that feels more you than anything you planned. A life that reflects your growth, authenticity, and truth. If you look back, you'll realize the detour was the only way to get here. You begin to sense what feels off. You begin to sense what feels right. You begin to sense what is calling you forward. Stillness is where the soul speaks. Stillness is where desire becomes clear. Stillness is where the path reveals itself. A life that attracts what is meant for you is a life that makes space for stillness. The power of being ready rather than wanting. Desire is not enough. Wanting is not enough. Hoping is not enough. You attract what you are prepared to receive. Readiness is emotional. Readiness is psychological. Readiness is spiritual. Readiness is energetic. Readiness means you are no longer attached to the past. You are no longer ruled by fear. You are no longer compromising your peace. You are no longer bargaining with your worth. You are no longer clinging to old patterns. Readiness means you have room in your heart, room in your mind, room in your energy, room in your life. Life does not withhold what you desire. Life waits until you are aligned enough to keep it. Becoming a lighthouse. Why you don't need to chase anything. A lighthouse does not chase ships. It does not run along the shoreline waving its light frantically. It does not plead, beg, or chase. It stands in its truth. It shines from authenticity. It radiates from alignment. It calls without forcing. It attracts without chasing. When you become a lighthouse, you become magnetic. Opportunities find you. Relationships seek you. Peace surrounds you. Clarity guides you. Purpose anchors you. You become unshakable, not because you cling to outcomes, but because you stand firmly in who you are. Creating a life that matches your soul, not your fears. Most people build their lives around their fears: fear of failure, right arrow safe but unfulfilling choices. Fear of judgment, right arrow inauthentic self-expression. Fear of loneliness, right arrow unhealthy relationships. Fear of change, right arrow stagnant environments. Fear of uncertainty, right arrow clinging to the familiar. But when you build your life around your soul instead, everything transforms. Your choices become bolder. Your relationships become deeper. Your opportunities become more aligned. Your environment becomes more nurturing. Your inner world becomes more peaceful. A soul-aligned life is not chaotic. It is coherent. It is meaningful. It is spacious. You stop surviving. You begin living. The law of resonance: what you emit, you receive. Everything in existence vibrates: your thoughts, your emotions, your energy, your beliefs. Resonance is the principle that like attracts like on an energetic level. When you are aligned internally, your external world reflects that alignment. When you embody peace, you attract peaceful experiences. When you embody clarity, you attract clear opportunities. When you embody worthiness, you attract relationships that honor you. When you embody abundance, you attract growth and expansion. When you embody authenticity, you attract environments where you can shine. You are not a passive participant in your destiny, you are a company creator. Your internal state is constantly communicating with the external world. The truth at the heart of receiving what is meant for you. As Part 9 approaches its conclusion, a profound realization emerges: you do not need to chase what is meant for you. You need to become the version of yourself who naturally attracts it. You attract through alignment, not anxiety. You attract through authenticity, not performance. You attract through openness, not control. You attract through boundaries, not self-abandonment. You attract through healing, not desperation. You attract through becoming. And the more you step into your truth, the more your life becomes a mirror of that truth. You stop living by force. You live by resonance. You stop striving for what is unstable. You receive what is meant. You stop gripping with fear. You welcome with openness. This is the essence of spiritual alignment, the final message of Part 9. You were never meant to chase your destiny. You were meant to realign with it. You attract what is truly meant for you by knowing yourself, honoring yourself, healing yourself, trusting yourself, expressing yourself, protecting your energy, following your intuition, living with intention, embracing impermanence. When you live from these principles, life doesn't just feel better, life begins to make sense. You recognize that your path is not random. Your timing is not random. Your redirections are not random. Your desires are not random. Everything is guiding you, shaping you, and preparing you for the moment you finally receive what was always meant to be yours. Not through force, not through hustle, not through perfectionism, but through alignment. There are 4 pillars of an aligned life. 1. Inner clarity, knowing who you are and what resonates with your truth. 2. Emotional cleanliness, releasing old stories, wounds, expectations, and patterns. 3. Authentic expression, showing up in the world as your real self, not your fearful self. 4. Energetic openness, making space to receive rather than clinging to what constricts you. When these 4 pillars strengthen, your entire life begins reorganizing around your growth. Not because you chase the right things, but because the right things begin recognizing you. The power of authenticity. When you stop performing versions of yourself that were constructed for approval, protection, or survival, something remarkable happens: you become magnetic. Authenticity is one of the strongest energetic signals you can emit. When you are fully yourself, unmasked, unfiltered, unclenched, you naturally attract experiences, people, relationships, opportunities, and environments that resonate with your truth. Why? Because authenticity simplifies your life. It removes misalignment. It repels what drains you. It invites what nourishes you. When you are authentic, you stop chasing validation. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop settling for half-hearted connections. You stop accepting work that exhausts your spirit. You stop shrinking your voice to avoid discomfort. And life responds with clarity. In the absence of pretense, you begin to see what is genuinely meant for you. Boundaries, the gatekeepers of alignment. If authenticity is the magnet, boundaries are the filter. A boundary is not a wall. It is an expression of self-respect. It is a declaration of your emotional reality. It is a way of protecting your energy without hardening your heart. Boundaries help you attract what is aligned because they prevent you from being drained by what is not. Without boundaries, you will attract people who take more than they give. You will attract opportunities that exploit rather than elevate. You will attract situations that reflect your old self rather than your healed self. But with boundaries, you attract relationships rooted in reciprocity. You attract opportunities that match your worth. You attract environments that support your growth. Every time you set a boundary, you tell the universe, I am ready for relationships, experiences, and opportunities that honor who I am. Boundaries make space for the right things to enter your life and prevent the wrong things from anchoring themselves into your spirit. Living with intention instead of habit. Most people live on autopilot, repeating old patterns, routines, choices, and habits without awareness. They wake up, go through the motions, and hope that life will magically change. But life does not change through hope. Life changes through intention. Intention is conscious living. Intention is presence. Intention is choosing rather than reacting. When you live with intention, you choose peace over chaos. You choose alignment over approval. You choose integrity over convenience. You choose what expands you, not what shrinks you. You choose movement toward your becoming, not clinging to your past. Intention recalibrates your life. It organizes your energy. It signals to the universe that you are an active participant in your destiny. Living with intention transforms your path from accidental to purposeful. The energetics of gratitude and abundance. Gratitude is not a cliché, it is a frequency. It grounds you in the present. It expands your heart. It dissolves scarcity. It strengthens your connection to life. When you regularly feel gratitude, you naturally raise your energetic vibration, making you more receptive to aligned opportunities. Gratitude does not deny pain, it balances it with perspective. Gratitude says, I acknowledge what is good, and I remain open to what can become even better. Gratitude dissolves emotional resistance. It shifts your mindset from what if everything goes wrong? What if everything is guiding me right? An abundant mindset is not about money or possessions. It is about believing that life is inherently supportive, that your needs will be met, and that the universe is not withholding anything from you. Scarcity creates fear. Abundance creates flow. Gratitude is the bridge between the two. The role of stillness in becoming a magnet for alignment. Stillness is often misunderstood. People think stillness means doing nothing. But in spiritual truth, stillness is transformative action. Stillness reconnects you with your intuition. Stillness helps you hear guidance. Stillness allows integration of lessons. Stillness helps you release anxiety. Stillness strengthens clarity. When you get quiet enough, you begin to notice the subtle nudges that were always guiding you. You begin to sense what feels off. You begin to sense what feels right. You begin to sense what is calling you forward. Stillness is where the soul speaks. Stillness is where desire becomes clear. Stillness is where the path reveals itself. A life that attracts what is meant for you is a life that makes space for stillness. The power of being ready rather than wanting. Desire is not enough. Wanting is not enough. Hoping is not enough. You attract what you are prepared to receive. Readiness is emotional. Readiness is psychological. Readiness is spiritual. Readiness is energetic. Readiness means you are no longer attached to the past. You are no longer ruled by fear. You are no longer compromising your peace. You are no longer bargaining with your worth. You are no longer clinging to old patterns. Readiness means you have room in your heart, room in your mind, room in your energy, room in your life. Life does not withhold what you desire. Life waits until you are aligned enough to keep it. Becoming a lighthouse, why you don't need to chase anything. A lighthouse does not chase ships. It does not run along the shoreline waving its light frantically. It does not plead, beg, or chase. It stands in its truth. It shines from authenticity. It radiates from alignment. It calls without forcing. It attracts without chasing. When you become a lighthouse, you become magnetic. Opportunities find you. Relationships seek you. Peace surrounds you. Clarity guides you. Purpose anchors you. You become unshakable, not because you cling to outcomes, but because you stand firmly in who you are, creating a life that matches your soul, not your fears. Most people build their lives around their fears: fear of failure, right arrow safe but unfulfilling choices; fear of judgment, right arrow inauthentic self-expression; fear of loneliness, right arrow unhealthy relationships; fear of change, right arrow stagnant environments; fear of uncertainty, right arrow clinging to the familiar. But when you build your life around your soul instead, everything transforms. Your choices become bolder. Your relationships become deeper. Your opportunities become more aligned. Your environment becomes more nurturing. Your inner world becomes more peaceful. A soul-aligned life is not chaotic. It is coherent. It is meaningful. It is spacious. You stop surviving. You begin living. The law of resonance: what you emit, you receive. Everything in existence vibrates: your thoughts, your emotions, your energy, your beliefs. Resonance is the principle that like attracts like on an energetic level. When you are aligned internally, your external world reflects that alignment. When you embody peace, you attract peaceful experiences. When you embody clarity, you attract clear opportunities. When you embody worthiness, you attract relationships that honor you. When you embody abundance, you attract growth and expansion. When you embody authenticity, you attract environments where you can shine. You are not a passive participant in your destiny, you are a company creator. Your internal state is constantly communicating with the external world. The truth at the heart of receiving what is meant for you. As Part 9 approaches its conclusion, a profound realization emerges: you do not need to chase what is meant for you. You need to become the version of yourself who naturally attracts it. You attract through alignment, not anxiety. You attract through authenticity, not performance. You attract through openness, not control. You attract through boundaries, not self-abandonment. You attract through healing, not desperation. You attract through becoming. And the more you step into your truth, the more your life becomes a mirror of that truth. You stop living by force. You live by resonance. You stop striving for what is unstable. You receive what is meant. You stop gripping with fear. You welcome with openness. This is the essence of spiritual alignment, the final message of Part 9. You were never meant to chase your destiny. You were meant to realign with it. You attract what is truly meant for you by knowing yourself, honoring yourself, healing yourself, trusting yourself, expressing yourself, protecting your energy, following your intuition, living with intention, embracing impermanence. When you live from these principles, life doesn't just feel better, life begins to make sense. You recognize that your path is not random. Your timing is not random. Your redirections are not random. Your desires are not random. Everything is guiding you, shaping you, and preparing you for the moment you finally receive what was always meant to be yours. Part 10. The peace of becoming. Life unfolds when you do. Approximately 3,000 words. There comes a moment in every deep spiritual awakening when you pause, not because you are tired, not because you are lost, but because something inside you has become unmistakably clear. You are no longer who you once were. You feel it in the softness of your breath. You feel it in the groundedness of your presence. You feel it in the way your body no longer clings to tension from an old life. You feel it in the softness of your heart, the steadiness of your mind, the spaciousness of your spirit. You have not arrived. That was never the point. Instead, you have become. You have become someone who no longer chases what isn't meant. You have become someone who no longer fears what may change. You have become someone who no longer clings to the past. You have become someone who no longer rejects the unknown. You have become someone who can sit with stillness without panic, who can welcome endings without collapse, who can trust timing without anxiety, who can let life unfold without needing to shape every detail. You have become someone who is at peace with becoming, and that is the highest form of freedom a person can know. The shift from striving to being. For most of your life, you believed that peace would arrive once you reached a certain destination, a goal achieved, a wound healed, a dream fulfilled, a relationship perfected, a version of yourself completed. But somewhere along this journey, you discovered that becoming is not a destination, it is a state of being. The moment you stop striving to arrive, you begin to live fully. The need to prove disappears. The need to compare dissolves. The need to rush evaporates. The need to cling softens. You become present. You become aware. You become spacious enough for life to move through you. The self you spent years trying to build through force, you finally found through surrender. The peace you chased externally had always been internal. And the person you once believed you had to fix, you now realize was simply waiting to be heard. Becoming is not the end of the journey. Becoming is the journey. When life stops feeling like a test. Life once felt heavy to you like a series of trials, judgments, expectations, and pressures. You navigated through guilt, fear, comparison, and doubt, believing life was testing your strength or punishing your mistakes. But as you awakened, something inside you softened. You began to see life not as a battlefield, but as a classroom. Not as a punishment, but as a teacher. Not as a struggle, but as a guide. Everything that once felt wrong now feels purposeful. Everything that once felt unfair now feels instructive. Everything that once felt chaotic now feels connected. You begin to understand life was never testing you. Life was shaping you. Every delay protected you. Every detour redirected you. Every heartbreak cracked you open. Every ending cleared space. Every challenge awakened something dormant inside you. Life wasn't trying to break you. Life was trying to build you. And now, as you stand in this new clarity, you finally see that nothing was wasted. The moment you realize you are safe in the universe. One of the most transformative realizations a person can experience is this: you are held. You are supported. You are safe. Not because everything in your life is perfect, but because you now trust your ability to navigate anything that comes. You trust your intuition. You trust your boundaries. You trust your emotional resilience. You trust your inner wisdom. You trust your alignment. You trust the timing of your life. Fear loses its grip, not when the world becomes safer, but when you realize that you are stronger. You stop distrusting the unknown. You stop anticipating disaster. You stop treating the future as something to fear. Instead, you begin to feel a deep internal knowing. I may not know what comes next, but I trust myself to meet it. This is the peace that arises when you become rooted in yourself. You are no longer carried by life's storms. You walk through them with steady feet. The beauty of a life uncontrolled. Control once felt like your only protection. You thought managing every detail, planning every possibility, predicting every outcome would keep you safe. But control is exhausting. Control is constricting. Control is a reaction to fear, not a path to peace. At some point, you began releasing the need to control, not because you stopped caring, but because you realized life becomes clearer when you stop gripping it. When control loosens, clarity enters. When control softens, intuition speaks. When control releases, flow begins. And you finally understand The more you try to control life, the further you drift from its natural wisdom. But the moment you allow life to lead, you begin discovering pathways you could never have forced into existence. You stop living through tension and start living through trust. The softness that emerges when you stop fighting life. Life is no longer something you battle. It becomes something you dance with. You no longer meet challenges with resistance. You meet them with presence. You no longer meet endings with panic. You meet them with acceptance. You no longer meet uncertainty with fear. You meet it with curiosity. A softness develops in your spirit, not weakness, but wisdom. Not passiveness, but openness. Not resignation, but surrender to truth. Softness is not fragile. Softness is powerful. Softness means you can bend without breaking. Softness means you can stay open without being overwhelmed. Softness means you can meet the world without armoring your heart. This softness is the fruit of inner awakening. It arises naturally when the walls built from fear finally crumble. The peace you feel when you stop abandoning yourself. Self-abandonment was once your only survival strategy, saying yes when you wanted to say no, shrinking to avoid conflict, settling to avoid loneliness, silencing your truth to avoid judgment, overgiving to feel worthy, clinging to feel safe. But now, something has changed. You refuse to leave yourself again. You choose your peace over someone else's comfort. You choose your truth over external approval. You choose your healing over what is familiar. You choose your intuition over your fears. You choose your boundaries over your guilt. You choose yourself over your old habits of self-sacrifice. This is what becoming looks like. You no longer betray yourself for anyone. And the moment you stop abandoning yourself, you stop fearing that others will abandon you. You realize I am here for me, and that is enough. The path becomes simple when you become clear. The greatest changes in your life are not external, they are internal shifts that simplify everything. Suddenly, decisions feel lighter. Your intuition becomes louder. Your direction becomes recognizable. Your desires feel more authentic. Your boundaries feel more natural. You no longer operate from confusion. You operate from clarity. Clarity is not the absence of uncertainty. Clarity is the ability to move despite it. And the more you know yourself, the more obvious your path becomes. When you are aligned internally, your external world naturally reorganizes around that alignment. Life begins to feel less like a maze and more like a flow. The peace of trusting what you cannot see. The mind craves certainty. The soul craves trust. There is a kind of peace that comes only when you allow the unseen to guide you, when you trust the timing, trust the redirections, trust the endings, trust the beginnings, trust the slow seasons, trust the rapid transformations. Trust does not remove uncertainty. Trust transforms uncertainty into possibility. You stop needing to know how and begin focusing on who you are becoming, who you are honoring, who you are expanding into. Trust turns life into a conversation instead of a confrontation. When you trust the unseen, you stop fearing the unfolding because you understand that life is not happening against you, it is happening for you. Who you become when you let life unfold. You become someone who no longer judges your journey by external milestones. You recognize that internal shifts are the real achievements. You become someone who no longer sees delays as failure. You understand they are alignment in progress. You become someone who no longer fears losing what isn't meant to stay. You know that what is meant for you cannot be lost. You become someone who no longer clings to identities that restrict your growth. You allow yourself to evolve without apology. You become someone who walks with that depth rather than desperation, with presence rather than pressure, with ease rather than fear. You become someone who sees the sacred in the ordinary, the meaning in the mundane, the wisdom in the silence. You become someone who finally trusts your own path without comparing it to anyone else's. And this becoming is what peace truly feels like. The full circle of your journey. As this final chapter unfolds, you recognize something powerful. Every lesson from parts 1 through 9 was preparing you for this moment. Part 1 taught you surrender. Part 2 taught you inner stillness. Part 3 taught you trust in timing. Part 4 taught you the art of allowing. Part 5 taught you the healing of release. Part 6 taught you the return to your true self. Part 7 taught you freedom from fear. Part 8 taught you the gift of detours. Part 9 taught you alignment and attraction. And now Part 10 teaches you the culmination of them. All peace is not a destination you reach. Peace is a person you become. Everything you experienced, every heartbreak, every delay, every redirection, every disappointment, every awakening was guiding you toward this version of yourself. The version who trusts life. The version who trusts themselves. The version who understands that nothing real can be taken away, and nothing meant can ever miss its way to you. You have not been losing your way. You have been finding it. The final truth of this entire journey. As Part 10 concludes, one truth rises above all others, the truth that carries the weight of every lesson, every insight, every transformation. When you become who you truly are, what is meant for you finally has a place to land. Life unfolds when you unfold. Life calms when you calm. Life clarifies when you clarify. Life expands when you expand. Life aligns when you align. You are not waiting on life. Life has been waiting on you. And now, with an unclenched heart, with a steady spirit, with a quiet mind, with a soul at peace, you finally open the door to everything meant for you. This is the peace of becoming. This is the grace of awakening. This is the fulfillment of letting go. You have come home to yourself, and life recognizes you now. Throughout this journey, we have walked through every layer of the human experience: desire, fear, loss, surrender, awakening, alignment, and peace. What began as a simple question, "What is meant for me?" became a profound exploration of how life actually works beneath the surface. The story unfolded like a spiritual map, guiding us from clinging to release, from confusion to clarity, from fear to trust, from survival to becoming. We learned that life is not something we must chase, force, or control. It is something we align with. Every experience you've lived, every heartbreak, delay, disappointment, detour, and new beginning was a stepping stone toward becoming who you were meant to be. Nothing was random. Nothing was wasted. Every ending created space for a new chapter. Every redirection protected you from a path that no longer matched your evolution. Every pause allowed your spirit to integrate the lessons your mind did not yet understand. We discovered that letting go does not mean losing. Letting go means clearing room for what is real. It means releasing what the ego clings to, so the soul can breathe freely again. It means trusting that what is meant for you will find you, not because you chase it, but because you grow into the version of yourself who can hold it. We saw how non-attachment frees you from fear, how stillness reconnects you to intuition, how boundaries protect your energy, and how authenticity becomes a magnet for what resonates with your truth. We learned that healing is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you were before life taught you to shrink. And ultimately, we reached the heart of the journey. Peace is not something you find at the end. Peace is someone you become along the way. You are no longer waiting for life to choose you. You are becoming the person who chooses life with full presence, full trust, and full awareness. What is meant for you cannot be forced, and what is not meant for you cannot be kept. Apply it. Stop clinging to what resists you. Respect the energy of your life. Release what drains your peace and follow what expands your heart too. Detours are not failures, they are redirections. Apply it. When something collapses or shifts unexpectedly, take a breath. Instead of asking why me, ask where is life guiding me now. 3. Peace comes from alignment, not achievement. Apply it. Build your days around inner clarity, healthy boundaries, stillness, and self-respect. When you change internally, your external life follows. 4. Trust the timing of your life. Apply it. Stop rushing your evolution. Trust that you are not late, not behind. You are unfolding at the exact speed your soul requires. And if this message touched your soul, Sparkles, please subscribe to Buddhism in Every Moment Sparkles. Your support gives us the motivation to continue creating powerful, healing content for you. Thank you for walking this journey with me.